Hi everyone. In this section, we will create a reactive version of Elastic Query Service and also Elastic Query Web Client. But since we will use some common classes between the reactive and non-reactive query service and web client, I will now create two common modules to prevent code duplication. Let's create a new module called Elastic Query Service Common and include model transformer and controller advice classes for query service. For dependencies, here I will need Lombok, Spring Context, Spring Web, Spring Security Core, Spring HTOS, and Spring Boot Starter validation, and local Elastic Model dependency. It is better to set only required dependencies here, instead of including all the starters. So that's why here I included some specific dependencies, like Spring Security Core, as adding starters will bring a lot of dependencies that is required for a microservice, but not for this common module. Now I can create com microservices demo Elastic Query Service common package. And then create API error handler, model and transformer packages under this package. Then I will copy the classes from query service to common module. Controller advice uses Spring Web dependency. Then models are using Lombok as well as the Spring Boot validation and HTOS dependencies. I will only move basic request response models and keep V2 model and assembler in the service, as we won't use them in the reactive version. For transformer, I need to change the imports to refer the common modules classes. Security core dependency is required for access denied exception in the controller advice. Finally, Spring Context is required for annotations like component annotation. Let's remove the sources from the Elastic Query Service now. Error handler, models and transformer. And then add a dependency to common module that we just created. And include the new common dependencies version in the main POM XML file. I can then fix the import statements to refer to the common module in the query service. Simply build the project and then fix the build errors. Finally, rebuild the project after doing the changes to see if it still compiles. Alright, then let's create a common web client, Elastic Query Web Client common module, to include model, exception, and controller advice classes. Here I will add Lombok, Spring Context, Spring Web, SLF4j API, and Spring Boot Starter validation dependencies. Again, I use only the required specific dependencies here instead of the starters. Now let's create API error handler package and then exception and model subpackages in the web client common module. and copy the classes from the web client to here, and then delete them in the web client. In Error Handler class, I will fix the request model imports. Then create a dependency to the web client common. Again, we need to add it to the main PAM XML file with project version. Then I need to adjust import statements here. Finally, let's build the project to be sure it can still compile. Alright, now we are ready to continue with the reactive version of Elastic Query Service in the next lecture. So I will see you in the next lecture.